this point, to invite you to one of the...
Sometimes it's not the king that breaks, but the boy meant to wear the crown one day. He was just a child, Prince George. But even behind the grand walls of Balmoral, where tradition lives and emotions are supposed to stay hidden, something slipped through the cracks. A royal staff member quietly found him crying, just a young boy overwhelmed by something much heavier than his age could carry. There had already been whispers, Camilla's side reportedly making George feel out of place. Small comments, little digs, things adults brush off, but kids absorb. And in that moment, at that remote Scottish estate, it all seemed to come crashing down for him. But here's the part no one expected. It wasn't William or Kate who comforted him. It was a longtime royal staffer, someone who'd seen generations of royals grow up. And those words may have been the moment George realized the truth about who he is and who he'll need to become. It all began on what was supposed to be a peaceful family weekend, but ended with one of the most heartbreaking moments behind palace gates. Prince George's life has never been normal. From the day he was born, the cameras have followed him. Smiling from the Buckingham Palace balcony, shaking hands at public events, walking carefully behind his parents. Every move is part of the role, but behind the polished image is a child quietly learning how to carry the weight of the future. Most kids his age are allowed to fall. George isn't. Every mistake is seen. The pressure doesn't just come from the outside, it lives inside the palace too. At home, he isn't just George, he's the future king, and he's fully aware. He watches his parents closely. He copies his father's calm posture and his mother's steady voice. He sees them smile when they're tired, speak gently even when upset. He notices every look they give each other after a hard moment. Every small hand squeeze, every pause, he takes it all in. George learned early that feelings are not meant to be shown. When Charlotte is upset, he steps in. When Louis is overwhelmed, George gently helps him focus. No one tells him to do this. It comes naturally now. That quiet sense of duty carries a cost. While other children play without a care, George watches and calculates. He sees how Camilla moves through the palace. He notices when certain names make a room fall silent. No one has to explain. He already knows. He grew up around whisperers, not warnings. He doesn't complain. He doesn't cry, at least not where others can see. Being a future king means keeping everything inside. But even George has limits. Balmoral was about to test them. The castle had always felt different. It was quieter, looser, more free. George always looked forward to it. Muddy boots, forest trails, fort building with Louis, no photographers. No stiff dinners, just time to be a kid. But this trip felt different. From the moment they arrived, George could tell something was wrong. The greetings were colder. Hugs didn't last as long. Camilla's smiles looked forced. Her tone with Catherine was sharp, even if quiet. William seemed distracted, like his mind was somewhere else. The tension wasn't loud, but it never went away. Even the kids could feel it. Charlotte tried playing with Camilla's grandchildren, but was brushed off. George saw them whisper and laugh just as she got close. Louis tried following them too, but after a while he gave up, left behind and confused. George noticed everything. Every glance, every shift, every smile that didn't reach the eyes. He didn't speak up, he just pulled Charlotte away, gently. He made up a new game to distract Louis. He did what he always does, protecting them, acting as the buffer, taking on the role he's grown used to. Even Catherine felt it. During a quiet garden lunch, Camilla laughed a little too loudly at something her grandchild said. George didn't hear the words, but he saw his mother's face. He recognized that brief flicker of hurt. To the outside world, it looked like a peaceful family holiday. To George, it felt like walking through a minefield. And in a quiet corner of the rose garden, everything finally collapsed. The rose garden was George's quiet place. Hidden behind hedges at Balmoral, it gave him space to breathe. That afternoon, he walked there alone, needing a break from the tension, the whispers, and the pressure to keep smiling. But instead of peace, he found something worse. He saw Louis first, crouched near a bush, watching a butterfly, just being curious like always. A few feet away stood one of Camilla's granddaughters. At first, George couldn't hear her. Then she stepped closer, her voice sharp. "Everyone says your mummy's just pretending to be queen. She'll never be like Diana. Even my gran says so." George froze. Diana's name was sacred in their house, spoken only with love. Now it was being used to hurt his brother. Louis stood still, confused. He didn't understand the cruelty, but he felt it. His lip trembled, his eyes welled. Then he turned and ran, crying through the hedges. George didn't move. He stayed hidden, frozen by fear and guilt. What if he made it worse? What if Camilla found out? What would his parents say? He watched it all happen, watched his brother's pain, heard his mother's name insulted, and stayed silent. Not because he didn't care, but because the pressure to stay composed was too heavy. But it wasn't just Louis who cried that day. That evening, while laughter echoed from the dining hall, George slipped away. No one noticed. He had always been the quiet one, watchful, respectful, never wanting to cause trouble. But something inside was breaking. He wandered into a small ivy-covered courtyard, a hidden place once walked by his great-grandmother. And there, with no one watching, he broke. The tears came quickly. It wasn't just about one moment. It was everything. Louis being mocked. Charlotte felt ignored. Catherine went quiet when Camilla entered the room. All of it had built up and George had no idea how to release it. He had only been taught how to hide. Royal insiders described George as thoughtful and serious, not the kind to act out. He watches, he learns, he carries, and now he was carrying too much. At that moment, he wasn't a future king. He was just a boy who had reached his limit. Then Thomas found him. He had served the royals for decades, first the queen, then Charles, and now the children. He wasn't powerful, but he noticed things. That night, he noticed George was missing. When he found him crying, Thomas didn't panic. He didn't scold him. He simply sat beside him. No questions, no rules, just silence. Eventually, George spoke. A few words, choked and quiet. Things didn't feel right. Thomas didn't interrupt, and that made all the difference. Staff like Thomas often see what the public never does, the quiet moments, the off-camera truths. He had watched George try too hard, carry too much, grow up too fast. That night, Thomas gave George something no one else had, permission to feel. And for the first time, someone truly saw him. George finally spoke. He talked about how it hurt to see Louis mocked, how Charlotte was ignored, how adults smiled while saying things that didn't feel kind. He didn't use big words, just simple, honest ones. Then came the line that stopped Thomas. "I try to be good, but maybe I'm not enough to make things better." That was the weight of royalty on a 10-year-old. Thomas didn't give a speech. He didn't explain family politics. He simply said, "You're not weak, you're human. Even kings cry when no one's watching." He told George what he likely hadn't heard before, that kindness is strength, that standing up, even quietly, is a kind of leadership too. At that moment, something shifted. George realized not every royal duty came with a title. Some came with heart. And maybe he didn't have to fix everything. Maybe he just had to stay true to what felt right. Many royal children have spoken of feeling invisible. Prince Harry especially shared what it meant to be raised in silence. George's quiet breakdown mirrored that same pain. But this time, someone noticed. What happened next changed more than just the mood. The next morning, something in the air felt different. Still tense, but heavier with truth. During a quiet moment with William, Catherine, and Camilla, George spoke again. There was no script, no press, just family. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse, he shared what had been sitting in his heart. He spoke about the things he heard, about his mother, about Diana, about how wrong it felt to stay silent just because it was expected. He didn't speak like a prince, he spoke like a son, A boy watching people he loved get hurt and deciding silence wasn't protection, it was part of the problem. And what made the moment powerful wasn't just what George said, it was that he said it. Royal children are taught to stay quiet, seen, not heard. But George's parents had raised him differently. William and Catherine, shaped by their own childhoods, made space for honesty behind closed doors. That foundation gave George the strength to speak, and when he did, they listened. William didn't deflect, Catherine didn't hush him. They let the words settle, and even Camilla, usually guarded, didn't push back. For once, emotion wasn't covered up, it was met. That quiet conversation opened a new door. Insiders say it led to deeper talks. Boundaries were set, the children's emotional safety became part of the conversation. Certain jokes and whispers, once ignored, were no longer acceptable. It wasn't a royal revolution, but it was a start. Royal tradition has been shifting. Slowly, and not just because of outside pressure. Sometimes change begins from within, with a child who dares to speak the truth. In that moment, George showed what leadership looks like. He's still a boy, he still laughs, still worries about school, but in that one conversation, he showed that real strength isn't about power or position, it's about courage. By speaking up, George reminded his family and the world that behind every royal photo is a human story. A child growing up with love, pressure, and quiet pain. And maybe, in finding his voice, George discovered something lasting, that when his time comes, he doesn't have to lead like those before him. He can lead with heart, not by hiding pain, but by honoring it. And maybe that's how change begins. Not with a crown, but with a voice. If this touched you, like and share this story. Drop a comment if you think the royals need to protect their children more. And don't forget to subscribe. We're uncovering what really happens behind those palace walls.